Hello, my friends. Slavana Hawkins here today to share some poetry together and to write some poetry together. The poem we're going to say together today is If by Rudyard Kipling. Usually we repeat the lines back and forth, but this poem is a little bit longer, so I thought we might do it a little bit differently. But there's one word in this poem that gets repeated a lot. And you might have guessed, since the title of it is If, that word is if. And a lot of the lines begin with the word if. So I'm going to let you start the lines for me or with me. And whenever it's time for you to say if you, then that is what I will gesture. You'll know that it's time for you to say it with me. If you, okay? So let's practice it on the first line. When I do this, then you're going to say if with me. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you. See how it works? So you can say the if part right with me as I say the poem. So let's see how this goes all the way through. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by the waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating. And yet, don't look too good, nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop and build them up with worn out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss and lose and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch. If neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you. If all men count with you, but none too much. If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son. I think that's a beautiful poem of things that are really hard to do, aren't they? There's some things in that poem that are really hard to do. You might like to listen to it again. But we're going to write our own poem now that begins with the word if. And this is a pretty big if. Today, the poem we're going to write together is called If I Were in Charge of the World. So let's think about that. If you were the one that was in charge and you got to boss and you got to make everything be just the way that you think it should be, what are some things that you would do? Wow. All of us do get to be in charge of a little bit of things. But what if you were the one that was in charge of everything in the whole world? You get to make a list in this poem of the different things that you would do if you were the one that was in charge. And it doesn't have to rhyme. We're not looking for a rhyming poem. It's just something for you to use your imagination to think about. So the first line of the poem is there on the page for you. If I were in charge of the world. In line 2, you get to write the first thing that you would do. And then just write out the first thing that you would do. What is the very first thing you would do if you were the one that was in charge? Would you make sure everybody got to have ice cream every day? Or would you pick something more important than that? Or maybe that is important to you. What is the first thing you would do on that line? And then on the next line, you'll write the second thing that you would do. Whatever that is. Once again, we're not looking for a rhyme here. This is just a list poem. Just some things that you would do if you were the one that was in charge. And then on the next line, you'll write the third thing that you would do here. So you get to come up with 3 things to start with. What are the first 3 things that you would do if you were the one who was in charge of the world? And then we have the line again. If I were in charge of the world, there'd be, and here's the 4th thing that you would do. What would you make sure there was? What do you think needs to exist for everybody and everything? That's your 4th thing. Then the next line has the 5th thing that you would do. And of course, the next line has the 6th thing that you would do. And once again, it doesn't have to rhyme. It's just a list poem. You can try and give it some rhythm if you would like to, but you don't have to. It's just some things for you to think about in your imagination. And you could think about the world as being the whole great big world, or maybe you could think about the world just being your own little individual world. If you actually got to be in charge of everything that happened to you, what are some things that you would do? Line 9 is, if I were in charge of the world again. And now you get to think about some things that you would not do. You wouldn't. So what are some things you would make sure that nobody was able to do? So not things that you would not do, but things that you would not let anybody else do. If I were in charge of the world, you wouldn't, and then put what you would make sure that the other people did not get to do. And you can come up with 3 things there. You've got 3 lines to say that you wouldn't do this, you wouldn't do that, you wouldn't do that. So what are some things that you would make sure nobody was able to do? 3 things. And here's the 4th one, then there's an or. So you get to pick on this line. Or, what else? What is one more thing you'd like to make sure of if you were the one in charge of the world? And then it just ends with the line, if I were in charge of the world. So please, write out your poem for me on the lines, and you can share them back with me. The person there that's working with you to do this, I'd love to hear everybody's poems if you can share them back with me. And you can either email them to me or just call and say them on my phone. I'd be glad to hear them recorded. If you want to hear, if I can hear them, read them out loud to me, that would be beautiful. You can either record or you can make recordings and send me the recordings, however works best for you. But I really would like to hear the poems back and what you come up with. I got this idea from the Time Slips website and some of the things that they've done there. And also the sharing the poems together with some of the other people and the poetry projects. And there's an Alzheimer's poetry project and some other things. So I appreciate the ideas that have been shared with me, and I'm glad to share them with you. And I've enjoyed doing that today. So share your poems back with me, please. I'll talk to you later.